And I haven't had the opportunity to sing that high in a long time. I'm more like, weave us together. But hey, you know, you got to stretch, okay? One morning last week, after I had fed my two cats, Jordan and Nicholas, okay, and they want to have breakfast between 7 and 7:30, I'll have you know. I then decided to go ahead and have breakfast myself, so I got a bowl of cereal and put my favorite coconut yogurt on top. And that stuff is good. It's Special K with coconut, dried cranberries, and there's something else in there. But sometimes I will add grapes, which are great in there. Anyway, I was decided to eat my breakfast in the living room, put on the news, okay? I like to stay up with what's happening, so I occasionally watch the news programs, and I was switching back and forth between MSNBC and CNN. And eating my cereal there, and something happened. I saw the news about and saw the pictures on television of the Palestinians protesting, and they were burning the American flag out there, and they had placards that they were holding that spoke hate words to Americans. And this was because of a decision that Trump had made to declare that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel. And so there was a lot of contention regarding that. And then I heard about the wildfires that were happening in California, and that particular day that the fires had moved into San Diego, forcing even more evacuations. Then I heard about the dismal situation still in Puerto Rico with people who don't have houses, and those who have don't have power. And this is 3 months after Maria devastated Puerto Rico. And it kind of went on and on. Then we had the special prosecutor and the Russians and everything. And something happened to me. I realized something was happening to me. I was sad. I was depressed. I even felt angry about all this stuff that was going on, okay? Stuff going on in our own country, okay? And I realized, what's happening to me, okay? I've been hijacked. My thoughts and my feelings have been hijacked, okay? And I'm caught up in all this stuff, okay? And I realized, oh my goodness, okay? There are people who watch the news every day and read the newspaper every day. I just check in periodically, okay? You know, to kind of stay up with things, catch up with things, okay? But I'll tell you, I must have needed material for this talk this morning, okay? But I found myself being dragged down by the negativity that I was watching and hearing on the television. And so when I realized this was happening, I grabbed the remote and I clicked it off. What I really wanted was to eat my Special K with my coconut yogurt in peace and not have all these images and words coming out. And so I did. But what I was surprised about was how insidious this process was. I mean, I had already soaked up and absorbed so much of this negativity before I even realized what hit me. Now, I did become aware, and I backed out of that, okay? But what happens when we think about these words, and we hear, and we begin to get caught up like I was doing here with this? And imagine those who are not aware that they're being caught up in all the negativity. And as we get caught up in the negativity, what happens is we begin feeling the way the people on the television set are feeling. Those who have lost their homes due to fires, or Hurricane Maria, and we begin feeling what they feel. We begin working our imagination and imagining what they must feel, having to deal with the devastation in their lives. And so instead of putting out helpful, uplifting, inspiring energy, we're putting out energy that keeps this negativity going. We're putting out our own fear for them instead of putting out thoughts of healing and upliftment and harmony and love and peace. So yes, at that moment, I realized what I needed most was peace. My heart called for it. So what are we to do when we find ourselves bombarded by not only television, the newspaper, what's happening in our neighborhoods? And one thing to remember is that these days, or nowadays, we are not only aware of what's going on in our personal neighborhood, but every neighborhood in the world is also connected to us through mass media. What's happening in the neighborhood in Calcutta, so many miles away, is right there affecting us, and we affecting that. So what do? Yes, we can turn off the television set, okay? But there is a level that we do need to be aware, because on some level, we are participating in this. We can't just put our head in the sand, but what we can do is reconnect with the source of peace in us. And instead of putting out negative energy, put out healing, uplifting energy. Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore wrote this. It is the law of spirit, he said, that we must be that which we desire to draw to us. If we would draw to us love, we must be love. We must be loving and kind. If we would have peace and harmony in our environment, we first must establish and be aware of and express this peace that's in our own hearts and minds. What is peace? My understanding of peace is that it's a state of mind, it's a state of consciousness, it's an inner feeling of serenity, of calmness in the storm. It's a feeling of assurance, and that we can trust that God, who created us and loves us and dwells in us and expresses through us, is working, is on the job, no matter what the appearances say to us. And God is working for good in our lives and in the lives of the people that we see on television going through difficulties, in the lives of our family members, our friends, our neighbors, in the lives of people around the world. This peace comes from having the ability to put faith in this and trust in God's love for us and God's will of good for us. How do we claim this peace? You know, we can look for it out there, but it's really not out there. Granted, there are times when people begin working together and this peace and this love is being expressed. But if we're looking for it in the circumstances, which are always changing out here, we don't find lasting peace. And that's because lasting peace is not something we get from out there. It's something we express from in here. So the way that we claim this peace, the way that we become aware of this peace, is by practicing the presence of this peace. And when we practice the presence of God, we are practicing the presence of peace, because God is the source of this peace. A couple of days after my experience with the television news, there was an article in the Salina Journal, and this was written by Susan Estridge, and she's a syndicated columnist. And her article said, is Trump making you sick? That was the question and the title of her article. Is Trump making you sick? And as she began this article, she shared a conversation she had with a woman acquaintance of hers, someone who she admired for her professionalism and her accomplishments. And she said her friend came up and said, you know, I think that Trump is giving me cancer. And she said, what? Okay. And her friend said, you know, there's this connection between stress and illness. And I think that Trump is causing me so much stress that I'm getting cancer. And she couldn't believe it, okay? And then she said, Susan noted that there were other people who were saying this same kind of thing. There was another woman who actually works for a local newspaper, and Susan is a friend of hers. And she said that friend too said something about, and she's battling cancer, and she said, I don't know, but I'm afraid that Trump is going to make me die earlier than I normally would. And Susan, hearing this now from several sources, began thinking, what's going on here, okay? They're letting, and she said, why are these people watching the news, okay? So she told this one friend, turn off that television set, okay? Stop watching it if it's making you sick. And the friend said, well, she actually said that the friend was offended because this friend wanted to stay aware of what's going on in the country. And so she was being resistant when Susan said, just turn it off, just disconnect. And what I realized from this article is that she was speaking truth. We have to be able to disconnect from out there. We can get trapped in the negativity, okay? And then we're not helping anymore. Then we are trapped and we are putting out negative energy as well. Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I draw all men unto me. And that same Christ presence indwells us. And when we turn to that Christ presence, now the Christ in unity is our personalized, individualized expression of God. So there's Christ in you and Christ in me. The Christ in me beholds the Christ in you. You are a personalized, individualized expression of God in you. And so when this Christ is lifted up, when we spend time in prayer, meditation, contemplation, connecting with this source of peace, it is lifted up. And when we are lifted up, our light shines. The healing energy flows through us. We become channels through which this presence of God, this Christ, can connect and lift up our world. The whole thing is dependent on how, or rather whether we are willing to practice this presence. Now, what does it mean to practice? There's a story about a Sunday school teacher, and what she was really trying to teach was what a miracle is to her children in class. And so she used this hypothetical situation, hoping that they would recognize the miracle in the story. And so she began, she said, now, kids, what if I went up to this 10-story building and I fell off the roof and a wind came up and it swirled around me and it caught me and it put me gently on the ground? Now, what word would you use to describe that situation? And the kids thought. And then one of the kids spoke up and said, accident. And she said, well, yeah, my falling off the roof was an accident, but that's not the word I want you to see in this. And she said, well, let me try it again, okay? All right. So say I go again to this, up to the top of this 10-story building on the roof, okay? And I fall off the roof. And this wind whips around me and catches me and places me gently on the ground. Now, what word would you use to express what happened here with me? And one of the other, I think a little boy piped up and said, you were unfortunate. And she said, well, I guess I was unfortunate since I fell off the roof, okay? But that's not the word I was looking for. Here, let's try it one more time. This third time is a charm, I know. Okay, so for the third time, I go up in this building, this 10-story building, up on the roof. And for the third time, I fall off. And once again, this wind whips up from nowhere and grabs me, okay, catches me, and sets me gently on the ground. Now, what word would you use to express what happened? And now the kids had it. They all had it. And they screamed, "Practice!" Not the word she was looking for, but it's the word that we need. Practice. Doing something over and over, okay? There's no right or wrong to prayer, meditation, contemplation, but there is a benefit to prayer, meditation, and contemplation. When we do our spiritual exercises and we are regular at them, we train our mind, we trained our heart, we train our body how to respond to things, okay? And I gotta admit, I must have been kind of off my game, okay, a bit here because, and again, it shocked me how sitting there and having my breakfast and watching that television, how easy I got caught in it before I even was aware. So yes, I would say I'm off my game, okay? And that it's a wonderful thing to realize because now I know what I need to do. So that practicing of this presence is very important, okay? Had I been in tune with this and on my game, okay, I would have realized sooner. And instead of feeling fear and worry, anxiety, and picking up on the feelings of those people who were experiencing challenges from the television set, I would have sent to them thoughts and energy of peace, of love, of God's provision for them. I would have sent energy knowing the truth that they are loved eternally and provided for by God, by divine love. Now, I want to share with you a quiz to find out how in tune or centered you are in peace. Now, something that I became aware of also last week, the Salina chorale that I'm singing with, last week I wasn't here because we had our concert at Sacred Heart Cathedral, and wow, there were over 400 people there, and almost everyone in that audience stood up to give us an ovation. That really, really touched us. That was fantastic, okay? Can't wait for the CD to come out so we can hear what we sounded like, okay? But what I realized, this coming weekend, the Salina Symphony Orchestra has its concert, and it's going to be Saturday the 16th and Sunday the 17th. The Salina Chorale, along with Kansas Wesleyan Choir and a number of other choirs in Salina, as well as every dance troupe in Salina, will be performing on stage, okay? From the little itty-bitty ones, okay, with their tutus, okay, to the teenage ones with dancing with the young men on stage. It's their extravaganza. They're calling it their Christmas festival. And our chorale will be singing with them both nights. And when we practice with them, what I realized is that before the symphony could play, they all had to tune their instruments. The clarinets and the oboes and the tubas, okay, the violins, violas, cellos, they all had to tune their instruments to one note. One tone, one note. And when they tuned their instruments to that one note, one tone, they knew that they were in tune with every other instrument in the orchestra. You know, we're like that. When we tune ourselves to the one note, the one tone that we call God, we are in tune with everyone else who's tuning up to that one note, that one tone. And so prayer and meditation, contemplation, give us that tune-up that we need. I realized after going through the emotions here, after watching the news that morning, that I needed a spiritual tune-up. And so after clicking off the television set, I did finish my Special K cereal because the yogurt tends to make it get mushy, okay, and I don't like that, okay. So I did finish it up, okay, and then I had a very sweet contemplation time and tuned up my spiritual instrument, okay. So the tools that we use in unity to help us tune up spiritually in prayer meditation are basically affirmations. Now, in your program, you'll see a 4-step process for centering prayer. And in centering prayer, it's kind of like this. We work with words. We make a statement, an affirmative statement, a positive statement about what is true spiritually. It really isn't about the appearance, other than to say, beyond the appearances which are negative, there is the presence and activity of God. And so we use affirmative statements to firm up in our awareness, our consciousness, the truth behind the negative appearances. And using affirmations is one way to get that spiritual attunement. Now, and some others use words in chanting. In centering prayer, they take like an entire statement and they bring it down to like one word, okay? One word which becomes your special word or a sacred word. Let's see, for example, using the affirmation, some of the affirmations here in our responsive reading. When I begin to feel stressed or agitated by what's going on in my life, the things I've said or done, the words or actions of others, I realize I can diffuse this tension by becoming still and remembering to let peace begin with me. Now, the process of centering prayer wouldn't use that entire thing. They would take that and say, what is the feeling tone of that statement? What is that statement saying I need most of all? If I were to sum that up, I would say, you can help me, what would you say? Serenity. So, instead of taking that entire statement, we would work in contemplation and prayer with just the word serenity. Saying it over to yourself or thinking it, letting that word become a part of you. Breathe that word in. Breathe in serenity. Let it move through your body. Feel what that feels like. Recognize the source of that serenity is God. And eventually what happens in the centering prayer is you go beyond the word. You exhaust everything you know about serenity. You exhaust every feeling of serenity that you know, and you get beyond the words. You get to the silent place where God speaks words of love and strength and encouragement and healing and peace. So I'm going to encourage you to work with this. Take this responsive reading home and work with this idea of summing up affirmative statements into the essential meaning for you or the essential need in your life, and work with that particular word. It's kind of like when we do the White Stone service at New Year's. We engage in meditation, and what you come up with is this special word which symbolizes you in the new year and what you are opening yourself to. Now, there are a couple other things you can do. Take time out each day for bliss. What's bliss, you say? Bliss is whatever brings you joy. Don't forget, soul needs to have joy. We all need to have bliss, okay? Whether that's going out to eat with friends or doing a movie or painting a picture or listening to your favorite music, okay? We all need to take time out for bliss and enjoy a good laugh whenever we can. And another is write a special letter of appreciation to yourself or to someone else. Forgive yourself and everyone else for everything. Just let it go, give it to God. These are all ways that we can practice more of the presence of God in our lives. Thank you. God bless.